that I want to show you that I think is easier. With the other ones, again, just like we've talked about, understanding the why behind. So this trick that I'm going to show you is why these rules apply, but I think the trick is actually easier. So I'm going to give you the rules just so you know. So for a rotation of 90 degrees, so when a point AB is rotated counterclockwise about the origin, so counterclockwise is to the left, counterclockwise, against the clock is what that means. The following are true. So a rotation of 90 degrees, x, y is going to become, remember that's how all of our rules start, x will become negative y and y will become positive x. For a rotation of 180 degrees, your original xy will become a negative x, your x becomes a negative x, and your y becomes a negative y. And then for a rotation of 270 degrees, your original point becomes, your x becomes a positive y, and your y becomes a negative x. Now again, remember, it's not negative x or negative y. It is the opposite of what it was before. So we just write the negative for it to be opposite. Now, just a side note, this is important. Rotations are assumed to be counterclockwise unless stated otherwise. So clockwise is the other option, and clockwise is turning it to the right. Okay, so if you ever get stuck, look at the hands of a clock and think about which way they move. So here are the rules. So there's kind of a pattern you can see going through all of those points, but what gets confusing is when you start in a quadrant other than quadrant 1. But this trick, if you can remember it, will always get you where you need with the signs that you need. So here's what you're going to do. I'll show you what it looks like in just a second, but let me give you the steps, okay? So the steps first are you switch the coordinates. You switch the x and the y for every 90 degrees. That means you need to actually be able to see it on a grid. Even if you just do a little grid and just put, okay, I know that it's in quadrant 1 and just put a point there. It doesn't actually have to be graphed where it's supposed to go accurately. You just need to know which quadrant it's in. Okay, you don't need to know anything else. You just need to know which quadrant it's in. So you're going to switch the x and the y for every 90 degrees, and then you're going to decide on the signs based on the quadrant that it lands in. Okay, so let me show you what I mean by that. So I have endpoints of FG. F, so remember this is quadrant 1, quadrant 2, quadrant 3, and quadrant 4. Let's do a quick review. Okay, quadrant 1 is all positive, positive. Quadrant 2 has its signs are negative, positive. Quadrant 3 are negative, negative, and quadrant 4 are positive, negative. Okay, and that's going to come into play because that's how we're going to decide what signs our final points get. So we're going to switch. So here's what I like to say. I'll say switch, same, switch. Okay, that way if you switch them, then you switch the letters. If it's the same, or excuse me, the numbers, then if you say same, then you keep the numbers in the same order that they're in. So switch, same, switch. So every 90 degrees that you're going to rotate, you're going to say switch, same, switch, same, switch, same, switch. Okay, so we're going to go 90 degrees. So first, we're going to start, notice that F is negative 2, 4. Now I'm going to graph it accurately, but really all I care about is that it is in quadrant 2. So if I'm going to rotate F 90 degrees, then I'm going to rotate from quadrant 2 into quadrant 3. Now, we don't really care about that yet, but what I think is for every 90 degrees, I'm going to switch. So I'm just going to write SW for switch so that I remember what I'm supposed to do. So I'm going to switch my numbers. Don't worry about signs, just switch the numbers. So my numbers are 2 and 4, and I'm going to switch them. So I'm going to switch my numbers. I went from quadrant 2 to quadrant 3, and I landed in quadrant 3. The signs in quadrant 3 are negative, negative, so I'm going to throw some negative signs on there, and I'm done. Okay? Now, I'm going to continue. I'm going to go ahead and go all the way around, and let's look at what F does. So if I go 180 degrees, then I went this original 90 degrees, so that's the switch. Then I'm going to go another quadrant, which is another 90 degrees, and that's going to be the same. So switch, same, and I land there. So 180 degrees, I go 2 quadrants. Switch, same. We switch and then same every 90 degrees. So I switch same, so I'm going to leave my numbers in the same order that they're in, 2, 4. And now I landed in quadrant 4. Quadrant 4 has signs of positive, negative, so I put my negatives on the ones that are supposed to be on, and then I'm done. Okay, and then let's do this last one while we're at it. We go 270 degrees, so I'm going to switch them. I'm going to keep them the same, and then I'm going to switch them again. Switch, same, switch. There's that 270 degrees. So every 90 degree quadrant you're going to go. You switch, same, switch. So I switch, same, switch. I ended on switch, so I'm going to switch them 4, 2. And then I am going to use the signs of the quadrant where they are, which I ended up in quadrant 1, which is positive, positive. So my final answer then for 270 degree rotation for F would be 4, 2. Okay, so you kind of get the idea. So if you want to try, put it on pause and try G, but let's go in and I'll show you G. So G starts at 3, 1. Again, all we really care about is that it is in quadrant 1. So if you want, you could just come over here and you could put a G, you could just put a G right there. You don't even have to be accurate. Okay, so for 90 degrees, I'm going to do it on this little one over here so that you can see it. So 90 degrees, I'm going to switch. So first thing is I'm going to switch my numbers. It's going to be 1, 3. I went from quadrant 1 to quadrant 2. Quadrant 2 has negative, positive, so I'm going to put a negative on the 1, and that's it. Okay, 180 degrees. Again, G starts in quadrant 1. I'm going to switch, same. Switch, same. You don't have to write the switch, same. I just am writing it so that you can see what I'm doing. So switch, same. So I'm going to leave them in the same order that they were in, 3, 1. I went from quadrant 1 to quadrant 3, and the signs are negative, negative in quadrant 3. Okay, and then last, let's do one more. Okay, I want to rotate it 270 degrees. So I'm going to switch, same, switch. Okay, every 90 degrees. Switch, same, switch. So I'm going to switch them. So they're going to be 1, 3. And then I'm going to use the signs from where they came from. So they're in quadrant 4 now. So they're going to be positive, negative. That's it. Okay. So you can try this. A quadrilateral has vertices. R is 3, 3, S is 8, 3, T is 5, negative 3, and U is 2, negative 1. What are the new endpoints if you rotate quadrilateral 90 degrees about the origin? Now, it's always understood to be counterclockwise, so this is counterclockwise. So I'm going to start with R. I don't even care where it is. R is right here. S is right here. T is in quadrant 3, or excuse me, quadrant 4, and U is in quadrant 2. No, it's also in quadrant 4. Sorry, got it backwards. Okay, so I don't even care really where they live for sure. Remember, I'm just going to switch the numbers that I already have and then figure out where it ends up. So 90 degrees about the origin. So I'm going to switch them because it's 90 degrees, so I say switch. So I'm going to switch them. So I'm going to switch R. Well, that's easy because it's still 3, 3. But I went from quadrant 1 to quadrant 2. So the signs in quadrant 2 are negative, positive, so I'm going to put a negative. S went from switch. Again, they're all going to be switched. So let's go ahead. We can just switch them all. So this is going to be 3, 8. T is going to be 3, 5. And U is going to be 1, 2. So they're all going to be switched because we did 90 degrees. But now we need to decide on the signs. So S went 90 degrees, 1 quadrant over. So now it's in quadrant 2 where my signs are negative, positive. T went 90 degrees, so it jumped up into quadrant 1. where it's positive, positive, and U went to quadrant 1, where it's positive, positive. So I'm done. That's it. That's all you have to do. So what if you rotated RSTU 90 degrees clockwise? This is the great thing about the rule. Nothing changes. You do it exactly the same as you did before. You switch it for every 90 degrees. So I'm going to switch 3, 3. I'm going to switch 8, 3. I'm going to switch 5, 3. And I'm going to switch to 1. Then I'm going to look at what quadrant I go to. So I go from quadrant 1 to quadrant 2 for R and S. So the signs in quadrant. Switch to quadrant 4. So I'm switching to quadrant 4 because I'm going clockwise to the right. So I go 1 quadrant to the right. Now I'm in positive, negative. So I put a negative sign on my negative 3. And I put a negative sign on my 8. Then T was in quadrant 4. It's going to rotate back here to quadrant 3 where my signs are negative, negative. So I put negative, negatives. U also did the same thing. It rotated 1 quadrant over to the right, and so it went to quadrant 3, so it will be negative, negative. Okay, what if you rotated 180 degrees? Well, 180 degrees, remember that's going to be switch same because you switch them out for every 90 degrees. So you can say switch, switch back, switch, switch back. I just like switch. So either switch them from how they were or keep them the same as they were before. So switch same. So that means we're going to keep all of our numbers in the same order. So 3, 3. I'm just going to go ahead and write them all down. 8, 3. 5, 3. We're going to keep the numbers in the same order, but I'm not worried about the signs at all. Let me erase to clean this up a little bit so that you can see what I'm doing. Okay, now I'm going to rotate 180 degrees. So I've already done my switch same, right? So I kept them the same. But now I got to figure out which quadrant they're going to be in. It's counterclockwise because I didn't say otherwise. So I'm going to go 1, 2, 90, 180. Now I'm in quadrant 3. So R and S are in quadrant 3. So that's where it's negative, negative. Right? So I'm going to put negative, 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 negative. Okay, then T and U, they're going to do the same thing. Let me switch colors so you can see. So T is going to go 90, 180. U is going to go 90, 180. They're going to end up in quadrant 2. Quadrant 2 has negative, positive signs. So I'm going to put my negatives where they go. Now, would rotating it 180 degrees clockwise change your answer? Well, if we do a quick look, okay, it would go 1, 2. I still end up in quadrant 2. I'll go 1, 2. I still end up in quadrant 3 where I did before. So no, rotating 180 degrees clockwise doesn't matter. 90 or 270 does matter. Okay, what if you rotated 270 degrees? Okay, we're going to do the same thing, only now we're going to have 3 changes. Okay, so we're going to, for 270, we're going to switch, same, switch. 90, 90, 90. Switch, same, switch. So we're going to switch the order of our numbers. So 3, 3. It doesn't switch anyway. 8, 3 becomes 3, 8. 5, 3 becomes 3, 5. And 2, 1 becomes 1, 2. You just have to work really hard to keep all these numbers straight. Okay, now I've moved them. Okay, I've done switch, same switch every 90 degrees. Now I just need to decide what quadrant are they going to be in. So R was in quadrant 1, so it goes 90, 180, 270. It ends up in quadrant 4, and that's where S does too, where my signs are positive, negative. So I just go in, I'll change colors so you can see the difference. Positive, negative, positive, negative. Okay, then T and U are going to do the same. They're going to rotate counterclockwise because I didn't state otherwise. 90, 180, 270. I'm going to end up down here in quadrant 3 where they're negative, negative. So I'm going to throw my negatives on there. Negative, negative. Okay. Now, if you rotated 90 degrees about 0.0